My insanely accurate intuition is telling me that life has been, let's say, lifing for you lately. In fact, it's pretty messy. It's messy in your brain, which is translating to it being messy in your life, in your business, which is causing you a lot of stress, anxiety, having your nervous system dysregulated, and you start scrolling and looking at other people and wonder, how do they have like their shit together and keep going? Do they not have all this stuff that's going on? Do they not have this insane mind of mine? How do these people keep showing up? There must be something that they know that I don't know. There must be something wrong with me. This will likely be the most raw, honest, and vulnerable behind the scenes episode of a successful entrepreneur in real time that you've ever heard. And it is vulnerable for me to share in this way. So don't think this just comes easily for me to record as this and in this way and in the current state of affairs that I'm in. But I am also trusting my intuition that this is what's needed because I want to normalize that this shit is messy sometimes and share with you how I show up regardless, even deep in the throes of the mess. If you're tired of hearing the same old basic mindset and motivational fluff talk, you've come to the right show. Welcome to Project Me with Tiffany Carter, the podcast where we dish on everything from managing that crazy brain of yours to manifesting abundance to my straightforward, actionable steps that will make you major money online. Now, I'm not your typical multimillionaire entrepreneur. It takes a small village to keep my anxiety and depression in check. I'm inherently disorganized with an intense obsession with office supplies. Your girl here is a digital marketing content expert who's generated over $200 million in sales. I promise by tuning in twice a week, you will get a much needed refreshing dose of truth, clarity, and cash making advice. Now let's get to it. What up, my people, my posse, my fellow crazies? It's your host, Tiffany Carter, and this is the show that is going to help you grow your business, your bank account, that big, beautiful brain of yours, your mindset, your abundance, and everything in between. And my hopes for this episode is that it will make you feel less alone in it, that we normalize some things that just are not put out in the world and aren't talked about, mainly because a lot of people who have businesses, they don't feel that if they really show the shit show that happens behind the scenes of their life, of what's going on in their brain, even in their business, that no one will want to work with them, that people won't want to buy, that people in their family will be upset that they're sharing too much, or a whole slew of reasons. And I've made a promise to you guys from the beginning of this podcast that I'm always going to 100% keep it real. I don't have the ability to be fake. I don't have the energy to be fake. And I do think that's one of the things that's missing from this entire, I guess you could say, coaching, motivational speaking, empowerment speaking industry that I was determined to come in and disrupt is we talk about the pain and the hard things in here. We can laugh, we can have fun doing it. I teach you the strategy, I teach you the manifestation and the abundance and all that too. But if you feel alone and you're in the thick of it and you're in a damn swamp, and you're like, I don't see anyone else in this swamp with me, and I don't know how to get out of this water. I don't see a way out, and I don't see anyone else struggling. It will make you feel so alone. You'll end up sinking further and further into it because we all make up stories that we're the only one going through this. There's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. I don't have enough confidence, or I'm not disciplined enough, or focused enough, or mentally sound enough. I'm not resilient enough to do this thing. Maybe I'm too sensitive for this world. What was I thinking to even, start a business or grow my business in this way or launch this thing? I want you to hear it from me, someone who has coached literally over 150,000 people worldwide from all walks of life, demographics, ages, industries, people who are just starting to people who are already making tens of millions of dollars. Unless someone is a narcissist or a sociopath or some other toxic condition, every single person goes through this stuff. And a lot of people go through it alone. Maybe they're fortunate enough to have a coach like me, or they have a therapist, or they have a very trusted partner or friend that they can speak to this stuff. But often people are suffering in silence because there's something that is certainly not talked about enough. And it's the loneliness of growth. It's the loneliness of shining. It's the loneliness of expansion. As you continue to evolve and you commit to doing different things, hard things, risky things, bet on yourself, grow your business bigger, shine brighter, work on your fears of being seen, work on your money noise, work on the shit that's holding you back to be able to show up as your higher self. You are going to lose connections that you've had for a long time in your life. It can be very triggering to other people around you, even family members. It can be very triggering to even someone you're married to because you are growing at a rate that they're not maybe ready to, equipped to, capable of, or willing to at the moment. And it makes other people really uncomfortable. And it can make you feel even more alone in all of it. Like no one understands me. They don't understand my need to do this thing or why I'm so passionate about this or why I get so upset about this not working in my business or this not panning out. And the crap that people say to me, which is why I'm extra careful about who I share stuff with, which can also make you feel more alone when you realize you don't have many people to share stuff with, is if someone doesn't have a similar setup in their life as me, meaning they're not pursuing big things, they're not growing a business, they're not working on themselves, like that's not a driving passion for them. People will say crazy shit to you like, well, you don't need to do this. Why don't you quit? You work too much. Oh, you're not cut out for this. In order to really be in business, you kind of got to be ruthless and you've got to have really thick skin. Your skin's not thick enough. You're too sensitive. Haven't you been at this long enough? Like, do you really need to keep doing this? They say crazy stuff. And that's not even what you're looking for when you go to speak to people about it. I've even had people in my communities and programs end up getting triggered by the growth of other people in the membership or other people in the program or even my own growth because now they've signed up for the program. They're in the membership. Now it's time for them to do the thing and they can't say they don't know how anymore and use that as an excuse. They can't say they don't have the support because they have that. So now their excuses have been taken away. And sadly, what a lot of people do when those excuses are taken away is they point the finger at you and they'll say, oh, this just isn't working. I don't like the people in here. I don't want to have to do it that way. Or they do some other self sabotaging behavior to blow their life up. And it can feel really personal, whether you're a business owner in that part of your life or in your personal life, right? Because it feels like it's being done to you. And if you're wired like me and in how I was raised, where everything was my fault, you know, everything was my fault. If I got sick, it was my fault. If I didn't get a good enough grade, it was my fault. If I was not in a great mood, it was my fault. Everything was Tiffany was a bad girl. And I know a lot of you listening have a lot of this default programming, which is why you relate to me. where it's, well, I'm not enough. I need to do more. I'm not enough this, or I'm too much of this and I want too much and I am too much and I want these things. And even you expressing your manifestations and what you want and desire, that in of itself can be triggering to people, because maybe they don't allow themselves to dream. They don't allow themselves to want. They turn that switch off because they don't think they'll ever get it. They don't feel they're capable of it. It's their own shit. And I'm not saying in a relationship that we don't have our side of it. But typically, when your side of the street of things is clean, or at the very least, you're willing to have an honest conversation, an open, true conversation, and someone else isn't, or they just kind of ghost you or lean away, and you're like, what the fuck? Or someone says something nasty to you online, or even someone has something to say about one of your offers or your programs, and oh, it's just not working for me. I want you to know that everyone has experienced that when you have enough high enough numbers of people in your programs. Those of you who've not experienced that, it's just a matter of time. Imagine having a restaurant or a storefront and you never have any customer who just says, I don't like the food, even if 99% of people love it, right? Like, there are amazing experiences, and you go look at the reviews or you go look at TripAdvisor, and someone is bashing the hell out of a book, or they're bashing the hell out of a hotel or a cafe. And you're like, what the heck? Because some people, when stuff is so good and so abundant and so refreshing and so different and so giving, they can't receive it. They have to shit on it. It's too uncomfortable for them to receive what you're offering. And this happens with clients, and this happens with friends, and this happens in relationships. When someone does not believe that they're worthy of receiving that level of love and support and connection, they end up ghosting you. They end up pulling away. They end up finding something wrong with you in order to go into self protection. And then they go back to those like surface level relationships. It's too deep. It's too uncomfortable. They ultimately feel you're going to find them out. It's always fascinating with people when they start giving me all sorts of excuses. I don't know what to say online. Well, I don't know what offer to put out next. And this happens with people who already have established businesses, but maybe things have kind of slowed. They're wanting to take it to another level. We're trying to break them through that abundance ceiling that they're in. And I start laughing sometimes at some point where I'm like, we're in a corn maze here. We can keep going with this, right? You've given me this story and we've debunked that. You've given me this story, we've taken this away. You've given me this line of shit, we've gone this way. And let's see how creative your brain is with coming up with more stuff to just stay stuck in this swamp of a corn maze. And if you notice that you're someone who does it, or if you're dealing with a client or a friend or a loved one who does it, it's so much deeper than that. It's your own shit. It's that you really don't think it's possible. You're afraid to believe that it's possible because what if this doesn't work? Then what? That's scary when you really want something so badly and it's vulnerable. You can do it in relationships. It's like, a friendship can feel so good and so safe. And, but I've had so many that weren't, and so many people have let me down, that you can get so hyper fixated on all the little things and end up, pushing this person away because you can't receive that level of love, or you're afraid you're going to be found out. This can happen when it comes to business. You have a great launch, you're starting to get clients, you're starting to get activity online. And then it's like, oh, this is a fluke. Is this really gonna, can I really trust this? Is this really, am I really going to be able to get to the next level? And end up spiraling right out of it. And life is going to be messy. Life is lifing. For me right now, life is really lifing. I am incredibly disappointed with a couple people in my life right now. And that's my shit to process. Being an acceptance of who they are and their own demons has definitely impacted me, but it's because of their own shit. And for someone like me, when I get disappointed greatly by people that are close to me, since my support system is already so small and it's something I highly value and put a lot of time and energy in, it can make me feel abandoned, discarded, used, unappreciated, even though it's not personal. It can feel very personal, even putting out an offer or putting something out into the world, and it doesn't seem to be appreciated by a lot of people. But what's interesting, and I know we all do it, we focus on the people who aren't leaning into us, who aren't appreciating it. It's because they're rejecting themselves, right? So they're going to reject our love, our support in any area of our life. But for me, it makes me feel rejected. It makes me feel abandoned. And it makes me want to hide from the world. And it makes me want to do nothing. And what the fuck? But I have to remind myself while I'm feeling my feelings around it, we need to let this shit out. But I also have to remind myself, but look at all the other people who receive what I give. Like you listening right now, those of you take the time to write an Apple podcast review. Really take the time to shout out the show and share it and reply to my emails and say how much it really helps you. That goes a long way. I know it goes a long way when you receive that from people. We have to remind ourselves of that, to do that for one another. Because I have so much evidence of people who really do value what I do, really do see me and get me, and who do a lot of work to tend to their own shit so that they can show up whole and not fragmented in relationships. And it can be so easy to focus on what we're not getting, whether it's from people, whether it's from clients, whether it's from sales, whether it's from engagement on social media. It can be so easy to focus on what we aren't getting yet, what we don't have, and so easily can lose focus of what we do have, because it's so loud and it's so painful and it's so hurtful when you're someone who really actually gives a shit. And the stuff that you do is so much deeper than fucking money. That's why my fellow heart-based entrepreneurs, we're wired differently. There's nothing wrong with people who are true, straight up business people. These are the people that go, hey, it's just business. It's nothing personal. I wish I was one of those people. Okay. I'd probably make a lot more money. I would get a lot more sleep. I'd have a lot less cortisol surging through my body. It's simply not how I'm wired, and that's okay. And I'm not putting those people down. Like, we need to have people that are, really more business focused in that way and don't have as many feelings involved, because there's certain industries where that's kind of required, right? But when you're someone who has a lot of feelings, when you're someone who has a lot of shit, mental health stuff, empath, highly sensitive, neurodivergent, whatever your thing is, it can all feel like too much sometimes. Now, on top of it, I have to show up and record podcasts when all I want to do is hide from the world, when all I want to do is do nothing and dissociate all day. How do I balance honoring myself and my needs, but also honoring myself for showing up for my responsibilities? And I didn't want this episode to just be like, let's talk about how much of a mess we are without a solution. I am currently in it, and I'm also currently showing up and talking to you right now. It would be a lot easier in some ways for me to have just said, you know what? I am not putting out any shows this week. I'm not putting out any content this week. I'm going to take my toys and go home and suck my thumb because that's what feels good. But ultimately, that is self-abandoning, right? I'm abandoning my dreams. I'm abandoning my audience. I'm going into a form of avoidance, even procrastination, which is really fear in disguise. And if we really play it out, it ultimately doesn't feel good. Some of you are sitting in that right now where you keep putting stuff off, putting stuff off. You don't want to do anything. You're in all of this resistance. You're stuck in the sludge. You're stuck in the swamp, and you're just magically waiting for it to lift. It won't magically lift. You have to decide right now, you know what? I'm going to take contrary action anyway. I'm going to show up and record the thing anyway in my current state of being. And even though that feels really vulnerable, even though I'm not maybe my normal self, perhaps you're supposed to show up this way right now. Because me not showing up, I would be sitting there rotting on the couch and hiding, not feeling good about that ultimately. It wouldn't feel good. It does feel better knowing I've showed up anyway and being true to myself. And so I asked myself the question, and this is what you're going to ask yourself: how can I show up as in the best possible way that I can while I'm a mess right now, while I'm dysregulated, while I'm feeling scared and vulnerable, while I'm feeling hurt, while I'm mad at the world, while I'm feeling so sad about these people I care about? How can I show up? What can I do? And I went, you know what? The episodes that I had planned for this week for you guys, I was like, I can't speak to those things right now in integrity and being genuine. I refuse to be fake. And I was like, what can I talk about? I'm feeling this way because clearly for me, God is leading me to open up a discussion that is not being had. You're feeling a certain type of way because likely so is your ideal client. And likely there are some of your friends in your life or loved ones in your life that are also struggling in silence that you don't even know. And maybe you're feeling this messy way, so you can talk about the mess and share things that you do to help navigate it. And even just holding space and showing up and going, you know, hey, I don't know who else is really going through it right now. Even knowing that someone else is going through it, not that you want that for someone else, but knowing you're not alone in it. And I want you to hear me on this. Not alone. You're not alone. I get it. I see you. I know you. The only difference between someone who is having that monetary success, who is achieving the things, and someone who isn't, is when the shit is messy, when the shit is mediocre, when the shit is thriving on any of the levels, we keep going. I find some way to show up anyway, because that's my commitment to myself and it's my commitment to all of you. So, what is a way that you can show up for the things and the people in your life that are important to you, even though you're going through it? Sometimes it's as simple as being honest. You know, I reached out to a friend of mine today and I said, I want you to know that I am going through it right now. I have a lot of stuff that's coming up and I'm processing a lot of stuff. And I'm not asking you to do anything about it, but I'm just letting you know, like, I might need like some space held. Right. And Then this person, because I chose to open up and be vulnerable, wrote back and said, "Thank you so much for opening that up and being honest about it. I'm actually struggling with something similar right now. And I didn't feel I had anyone to talk to about it or that anyone would understand. And I was blaming myself, and maybe I'm too sensitive, and maybe I care too much. And, it's, my problem, and I just need to get over it, and so on and so forth." And we were able to be a beautiful support for one another, but I had to take an action first. Maybe you're being called to take that action first. Maybe you've put yourself out there quite a few times lately in your personal life, in your business life, and you've not really had it reciprocated, whether it's money, clients, love, attention, affection, understanding, support. And it feels like shit when that happens, especially when it's happening both in your business and your personal life at the same time. It can feel really lonely. It can feel really scary. It can feel like you're in that swamp all alone. And I want you to have this episode to be able to pass on to someone who's going through it, even if it's someone who tells you 2 weeks from now. You can go to episode 654. This is the real conversation of lifing. And I don't know why in so many countries and cultures we've been like shamed to not talk about this stuff. Like, you should just be grateful, like the toxic gratitude. You have so much, focus on that. Give it to God. There's all these things that just like almost make you feel like you need to shut up and get over it. And it's like, no, this shit is hard, especially when you're someone who is awake and evolved and has done the work and you feel all the things. It's fucking hard. It's vulnerable. It's terrifying. It's scary. It all feels like too much. And we get to keep going. We get to feel our feelings. We get to have a meltdown. We get to have a couple days of hiding. And then we have to keep going. That's the resilience. That's the muscle that's built. So I want you to answer the question one, like I said, how can I show up on some level for the people in my audience, in my business? If you have a brick and mortar business, right? Imagine you had a restaurant and you're going to have to show up. What are you going to put a close sign on the door on the weekends and you have a cafe? You would have to show up if you're an employee. I mean, yeah, you can call in sick, but you can only do that so much. You have to show up. And so you've got to treat your business and the people that are important to you in your life. How can I show up with honesty and integrity for myself and others in my current state? And typically it involves being honest about where you're at. You don't have to disclose all the details. I didn't disclose everything that I have going on. I don't even know how to fucking put it into words, all the stuff that is coming up for me right now. So I wouldn't even be able to eloquently say it or get it out where it makes sense. And that doesn't matter. If that's not important. That what's important is the lesson here, the honesty here. And so you can see proof that you can be in a full spiral. You can be having a dumpster fire situation going on. And when you show up in those places, what ends up happening is people are so magnetized and are so grateful and feel so much closer to you because you're being fucking real in a sea of fake. And the fake gets really fucking old and it doesn't make us feel good. That's why it's dangerous to do like scrolling when you're in a messy state because it's like, oh, look, everything's perfect in their life. Oh, they have the perfect relationship. Oh, they have like this whole family. They've got all this money. They've got all this. And it can be easy to compound and pile on to what you don't have. And you have to force your brain to go, okay, let's look at what I do have in my life. Who are the people who are really showing up for me in my life? It might be one person. In fact, it might simply just be you. It might be you and God, you and the universe, you and your dog. What else are you not giving yourself credit for? Look at all the growth that I've done this year. And look at how I'm showing up anyway, and I'm doing scary things, and I'm navigating hit after hit after hit. And give more credit to yourself for how far you've come and what progress you've made this year. Maybe it's not in the exact way you want to see it. Maybe it's not in dollars and cents. Maybe it's not in, per se, a relationship in your body, whatever. But there's definite progress that has been made. And let's give yourself credit for that. Look at the people who are showing up for you. Maybe it's even someone who you don't know, but you feel seen and heard by them because you're reading this book, you're listening to this podcast, you're reading a blog article about something. And it's like, okay, this person really understands me. It could be the fact that you have a friend that just, gets you and sees you, and it's one person. It could be that you had a bunch of people write reviews or liked one of your videos that last week. Let's make a point of redirecting your mind on all of the things that are happening, that are the miracles, that are the beautiful things. I mean, the fact, honestly, it's cliche, but like the fact that you're alive and you're functioning and you're able to even be listening to this right now, and that you're willing to continue to go and continue to expand and continue to learn and be humble and feel your feelings and work through your shit. That's incredible. And those of you who are parenting on top of all of this, you deserve an extra fucking shout out. I was raised by someone who didn't know how to do that or chose not to do that. What a blessing. And I know how much guilt you guys put on yourself. But I promise you, if you were like a toxic parent, you wouldn't have. My guess is you wouldn't have a level of guilt about not being a good enough parent. I mean, wow, I would have welcomed my mom having guilt about not being a good enough mom. That would be amazing. All we can do is the best that we can on any given day. And we have to trust that's more than enough. And I promise you, it is more than enough. I'm proof and evidence for you that it's more than enough. And there's other people and other things that are proof and evidence. This is by far my record breaking year in terms of success in a multitude of ways for Project Me with Tiffany Carter, the podcast and business coaching academy. And it's also been one of the more trying years and painful years of things that have happened, of trauma that's come up. But it's also been one of the most profound healing years of my life. It's an and, it's not an or. Typically, if you're going through the most shit and the most pain, it's also the most transformative. You're not repelling abundance and success and your manifestations because you keep getting hits. These hits, these messy periods, this is part of it. This is part of your growth. In fact, this is a sign that you are being prepared for your next great awakening, your next expansion, your next big level. And sometimes just when we get to the next level, then it's a mess again. And then you expand again, You're like, oh my God, this is exhausting. Imagine being on a roller coaster all day long, every day for days. Your nervous system is exhausted. That's so much. It's so taxing. No wonder why you're exhausted and you're tired and you need a reprieve and you need more alone time. You need more regrouping time. You need more time to recover and restore. Perhaps you've not been honoring this about what's been going on in your life. and you've not been giving yourself that extra space to do it, you just keep going on the roller coaster. You need to really give yourself extra support during this time and do your best to not judge yourself for needing it. I have needed more alone time, restore time, sleeping. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm sleeping like solid 9 to 10 hours a day. I'm spending a lot more time alone in complete silence. I am extra sensitive to a lot of stimulus. I'm honoring that. Of course, it makes sense. There's so much movement going on energetically with me in terms of healing, in terms of growth and expansion in my business, in my personal life. Yes, you're going to need more reprieve. Don't you think Olympic athletes need more rest and nutrition and massages and adjustments and support when they're training for the Olympics and in the Olympics versus it just be like, a regular year? Well, yes. And my guess is you've not been giving yourself enough of that space and support and have given yourself time to acknowledge all that you've done. I mean, think of kids who go through, like when you go through puberty and a growth spurt and you get stretch marks and you go through the awkward phase and all sorts of uncomfortable things happen. And that's understandable. Well, this stuff continues until the day you die. We have so many different versions of ourselves as long as you are someone who continues to put yourself out there and you're humble, open, and willing to grow. And it's a lot. And we don't always give ourselves enough self compassion for everything. And even you taking a moment from listening to this episode to soften to yourself and give yourself that acknowledgement and compassion, that's going to take a weight off you and of yourself. You're already probably starting to feel like at least you got a life preserver in the swamp. Maybe the swamp isn't as deep, it doesn't feel as heavy. This is all normal. This is all part of it. In fact, I would be concerned if you weren't going through that because this would show me that you're not expanding and you're not growing. But I also know what it feels like when you're waving the white flag and you're like, okay, universe, God, enough already. I'm tired. And that's okay too. And honor that too. And you get to keep showing up regardless in some way. You don't need to be on it and well spoken and look a certain way and juggling 50 things at once and being a productivity machine and mentally sharp all the time in order to have success in your life. If that was the case, this podcast would not be where it's at today. There would not be millions in the bank. I've done a lot of growth. I'm always seeking to grow. And there's a lot of messiness that goes on here when growing a business, when growing in my own personal development. And I just find a way to show up anyway, but I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't show up for myself and honor myself first and be willing to disappoint and upset and disrupt other people. And it's going to, because there's no way you can truly take care of yourself during a messy period while people pleasing. And trying to do both you'll get sick. And that's why so many of you get sick when you're expanding. And it literally happens. I'm not exaggerating. It's 100% of my private clients. Doesn't matter how much they have in the bank, what their situation is. When we get to a certain point, when it's time to do the damn thing, put the thing out there, we're doing it. We do stuff in real time when you work with me privately. This is not more information. You're implementing with me by your side. It's go time. And they'll get sick. And I'll even warn them, you might start feeling sick. And if you aren't taking extra time to honor yourself during this expansion period and not be people pleasing and pulling back from other people, places, and things and pouring into yourself without judgment, without guilt, without fear, your body's going to do it for you and you're going to get sick because everyone gives you a pass when you're sick. It's okay for you to rest because you're sick. Oh, it's okay because you're nauseous. You don't have to go to the party. You don't have to go to the event. You don't have to cook dinner because you don't feel well. And that's why a lot of you end up regularly getting sick because that's the only time you give yourself permission to rest. And that's the only time that the people around you that you've been people pleasing with give you permission to rest as well. And you get more support and attention when you're sick in general. And we have to reteach the people around us to support us and how to support us when we're thriving, not just when we're sick. And this is coming from someone who used to get sick every 5 weeks. And I had a story around it that I had a crappy immune system because I wasn't breastfed. Like I totally made this up. Then it was I have a crappy immune system because of having CPTSD. Well, like I at some point it was like, well, I don't want this to be the story anymore. So I had to change how I do things. And it can feel really uncomfortable creating space and nurturing and love for yourself before you need it. You know, it's like hydrating, drinking water before you're thirsty, or making sure you eat protein when you're not hungry. You just have to do it. Because if you don't do it and you wait, the consequence is much bigger, and then you lose the consistency in your life and your business. It causes so many other issues, and the cost factor is so high. What can you do to give yourself extra nurturing and support right now? What can you also release? Because there's some things you don't need to be doing in your life and your business that can be put on the side. And this is not the same as procrastinating. This is managing priorities. Income and joy generating activities are always at the top of the list. There's a lot of nice to do's, a lot of nice to haves, or shit you think you have to do that isn't that important, that's weighing you down. I've even moved launches before because it was too much and it was too loud, and it ended up being just the perfect time. Maybe you being so resistant to certain things is because the universe is trying to force you in a different direction and you've not been listening. So it's creating so much pain and so much anguish and stress for you to be able to make a decision that feels better to your nervous system and to your body. I got off on such a tangent there. I forgot to say to you guys that you need to make sure you go download my Your Season of Abundance guided walking meditation series. That's free for you. I have it inside the link in my show notes, and it's also here on ProjectME TV in the description. It's projectmewithtiffany.com/season of abundance. This is going to help put you back in the abundance zone and help calm your nervous system. Also, make sure you are on my free Secret Posse weekly digest. We have some very exciting things that are coming out for the holidays, and you need to be on that list. That direct link to sign up is also in the show notes when you swipe up, description on YouTube. You can also go to projectmewithtiffany.com/secret posse. And please, if you appreciated this conversation being opened up, share it with someone who you know would also appreciate it. Leave a written 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if you're an Apple Podcast listener. That really helps the show grow. Tap the 5 stars on Spotify. Comment here on ProjectME TV on YouTube. Take a screenshot, share the show, make a TikTok with the show, tag me, and allow people to also be able to experience the, oh, wow, this feels so good. I'm not alone. If that's what this made you feel, and you have a sense of an exhale and you don't feel like you're in the swamp, or it feels at least a little bit less heavy, all I ask is that you pay this forward so someone else feels that way today too. Wishing you great health, wealth, and worth as always. Love you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a 5-star review on iTunes. Not only will this make me super happy, but it will allow more listeners to find our special show. Simply help me help others.